Phil. I think it's happened again.
Al, what did you do?
I didn't do anything, I swear to God.
Your hair is gone.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and we got some breaking news. Not again. DC Comics once again changes up their distribution model for comic books. Starting in January 2021, they're doing UCS Comics Distributors permanently. They're going to have 3 distributors, Lunar as far as periodicals, then Diamond UK for the Europe, and then they're still going to have like Penguin House for graphic novels and things like that. I think this is a big change. This the information I'm deriving this from is actually from an article from bleedingcool.com. I'm not going to read the article. I'm actually just going to read the letter from DC to retailers, but there will be a link to the article in the video description if you want to go down there and read it yourself. There's a little bit more information. There's also a letter from UCS to comic retailers as well. And I'm going to go into there. They've also changed their new minimum order criteria. Diamond's had minimum order criteria for a very long time, and they have not they haven't really implemented. They haven't enforced it for a very long time. But now DC will have their own minimum order criteria going through Lunar moving forward. Now these are big changes. Going to have more effects on the East Coast comic shops than the West Coast. Obviously, from what I've heard, no matter whether it was UCS or Lunar, if the comic shop was in Canada, they're kind of screwed either way. They weren't really getting their comics on time, and it was very expensive. So possibly if you're on the East Coast of Canada, this will affect you even more. I'm not really sure. We'll look at that map here in a few seconds. But before I get into the details of this breaking news, I do want to say if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, I definitely want to hear your comments and feedback in the comments section. You know, what are your thoughts on this? You know, if you're a comic book retailer, how is this going to affect you? Is this going to affect your bottom line? Is this going to increase costs? You know, will you no longer be able to order DC Comics due to the new minimum order criteria? I'm very interested to hear from retailers. And I'll definitely, I'll almost like 99% likely have a follow-up video on this with a retailer specifically to talk about the fallout. I wasn't able to get one on in such short notice, but let's kind of get into it today. As I mentioned, this is an article from bleedingcool.com, and I'm going to read the letter from DC to retailers, and I'll probably stop halfway through and kind of talk about, I'll break it into the 2 parts. So in April, UCS Comics Distributors and Lunar Distribution partnered with DC to transition to a multi-distributor model for the direct market at a time when comic book distribution was on pause and the supply chain disrupted as a result of the safer at home orders that were put in place. We are now in our next phase where, as of January 1st, 2021, DC publications will continue to be distributed in the direct market by Lunar Distribution, Diamond UK, and Penguin Random House for graphic novels and collected editions only. UCS Comics Distributors will no longer distribute DC publications, but retailers can continue to order from UCS to the end of November. We want to take this time to sincerely thank UCS for their help during this transition, and we will continue to provide all our support to UCS as retailers shift their account over to Lunar or other distributors. Please note the last date to place FOC orders and reorders through UCS will be November 29, 2020. Any publication eligible for returnability must be returned to the distributor from which it was received by. Their returnability end dates, return received after the end date cannot be accepted. So let's talk about this and how it could affect or likely will affect comic book retailers, local comic shops. When this was first implemented, Lunar was essentially DCBS and was covering kind of the Midwest, western portion of the United States, in the western portion of Canada, kind of the middle portion of Canada as well as Hawaii. And then UCS, which was essentially Midtown, was doing like all the East Coast and then kind of the Southwest through Texas. Now, they were both national distributors, but retailers were strongly urged to order like regionally based on kind of this map. due to cost and delivery times, things of that nature. Now, I imagine, unless Lunar Distribution has set up more distribution centers, which I have not seen that anywhere, that the cost associated with shipping DC Comics to the stores that were being serviced by UCS, mainly on the East Coast and through the Southwest through Texas, or Southeast through Texas, their shipping costs are going to go up. The cost of each comic book, for them to get a hold of it and sell it to their customers is going to go up. And that is probably going to affect them very negatively. I'm not a big fan of these changes. Obviously, going to Lunar and UCS was a big gamble for DC Comics. Diamond had a monopoly on comic book distribution for like 20, 25 years. Was it that long? I think it was 25 years. It was a big change, but there's a new change in the air. Not sure exactly. I want to talk to an East Coast retailer. Obviously, I do talk to Larry from Larry's Comics up there in Lowell, Massachusetts, but he is not available today. Hopefully, I'll be able to get him on this week, and I can talk to him. Otherwise, the only other retailer I have, well, actually, Pele is in Tennessee, so there's a good chance that he was also had service through UCS. So I'll see if I can get one of those two on and see if this is in fact going to affect their bottom line as far as shipping costs. We know that shipping costs had gone up because comic retailers were getting discounts because they were basically bundling up their Marvel orders with their Image orders, with their DC orders, and they were getting shipping discounts through Diamond. Once they started shipping DC separately from Diamond through different distribution, shipping costs were going up, and retailers were not happy. And I believe it was UCS that was having the most problems as far as their customer service wasn't very good. I know at one point they essentially shut down their customer service lines, and you had to email them. They didn't want to take feedback directly via phone anymore. I'm not sure exactly how long that lasted, or if it was still going on to this day. And I believe they were having a lot more issues as far as comic books arriving on time. Another issue that came up with this new strategy with DC Comics, they really weren't doing reorders. They were shipping, or they were printing to order. So if they got 105,000 orders by FOC of Batman 100, they printed 105,000 comics because there's really no warehouse and things to store like Diamond had. Whereas in the past, they would have printed like 130. That way you could actually reorder the issue before it even arrived. And it was causing a lot of strife for comic book retailers. And I imagine that will only get worse now that they've gone to one distributor. So I do think this will have negative effects. I do definitely want to talk to some retailers, and hopefully I'll hear some feedback in the comments section on how that's going to affect them. Now let's talk about the minimum order criteria. And I'm also going to talk about future state as well after this, and some of my thoughts on total a minimum of $125 per weekly order based on retail sales value, i.e. cover price, or total of $500 monthly. Orders that do not meet this amount will be held until further orders are added and the minimum is met, at which time the combined orders will be shipped. The minimum order requirement goes into effect with the December 6, 2020 FOC date. In order to help transition all counts smoothly, information is below on how to sign up with Lunar Distribution. So this is interesting. This is obviously going to affect the smaller shops. I wonder if this is directly to combat. I wonder if there were shops that hadn't really, they had signed up for Lunar or UCS, but they were only ordering the big books. Like maybe they were just ordering Batman 3 Jokers, or they were just ordering Joker War, or some of these bigger titles that are selling really well, and they weren't ordering the rest of DC's lineup. And they're kind of saying, listen, if you want the good stuff, you gotta have at least a minimum order of $500 monthly. I don't know. I think minimum ordering criteria is probably responsible and necessary. But at this very time when retailers, brick and mortar across the country, as far as the United States, and I imagine it has to be mostly around the world, is being decimated by the lockdowns and shutdowns associated with the pandemic, I don't think putting a penalty on small businesses without a lot of cash in hand and able to maybe not be able, they just don't have the cash to meet those minimum order requirements. It feels predatory in nature, probably mean-spirited, basically given the times that we're living in and experiencing right now. So I'm definitely not a big fan of that either. I don't think that's a nice move right now with what's happening. We haven't felt the full effects of what's all's going to happen. The PPP loans are drying up, whether they're going to be forgivable loans or whatnot. And, like I said, there are reports like 40% of retailers across America end up getting closed. Obviously, the biggest being hit are like restaurants and things like that. But, not a nice thing to do at this point in time, as far as I'm concerned, setting minimum order requirements as the pandemic recovery is still going on. So not a big fan of what DC Comics is doing here today, although I do find the timing very strange. This coincides directly with Future State. The big 2-month initiative is essentially DC Comics is biding their time until they can relaunch all their ongoings in March. And if you look at the DC Comics January 2021 solicitations outside of Future State, there's not a lot coming out. In fact, these are them. It's American Vampire 1976, number 4. That is Black Label. Batman Black and White, number 2, which I don't believe is Black Label, but it is a prestige format, $6 comic book. Obviously, that is an anthology. On that comic book is done to be Tom King, Gabriel Hardman, and Karina Bechko, David Aja, Sophia Campbell, and Dustin Weaver. Obviously, the Tom King, Mitch Garrett story will probably be the one people are most interested in. Don't know why. Batman and the Adventures continues. That is not Black Label. Number 8, that is also scheduled to come out. Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn, number 4, Black Label. Wait, no, I guess how is that not Black Label? I thought Batman White Knight was Black Label. Yeah, that one's Black Label. Batman Catwoman, number 2 will be coming out in January. Deceased, Dead Planet, number 7, one of my favorite current ongoings. The Dreaming Waking Hours, number 6. Joker Harley Criminal Sanity, number 7. I thought that comic was done. Apparently it wasn't. That took a long hiatus. The Last God, number 12. And like Looney Tunes 258. So DC really does not have very much outside of Future State going on at that moment. Although if I remember correctly, there is a secret Dark Knight's Death Metal comic book that they've talked about in January, but there's no details. I don't even know if maybe that one is in December, because it's not in the solicitation. So I find that interesting. Are they trying to force comic book retailers to go and buy into Future State when they transition over to Lunar now that they have the minimum order requirements? Are they trying to make them order Future State? We know that everything in Future State is returnable. Every single comic within DC Comics Future State is going to be returnable. The $8 comics, $6 comics, $4 comics. I don't know. I find that the timing interesting. I think, on Wednesday, there's going to be a video on the channel where Perch and I talk about, is this a time where readers are going to see this as a jumping off point? They're not interested in DC Future State. They're going to leave DC Comics at least for 2 months, and will they come back? Is this a time that retailers are going to leave DC Comics? The shipping costs are going to go up if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast or in the Midwest and your orders didn't meet $500, are you going to increase those in a time like this when money is tight? DC doesn't have much going on other than Future State. There's a couple of books in there. Batman, Catwoman, I'm sure will be very successful. I think there's a Rorschach comic in there as well. Deceased is obviously a big hit for DC Comics, but other than that, not a lot going on. There's not a Batman comic. That's their hottest series Batman 3 Jokers is wrapped up by then. Not Batman. Dark Knight's Death Metal is wrapped up by then. So the big events are done. And you just have Future State, which it's, from the comments that I've seen, it's like 50-50, hate it or love it. I wonder how the retailers are going to feel. And I do think this is probably DC is trying to coerce or convince comic shops that they need to buy into this. I think the timing is poor to implement this change. I imagine they wanted to do it by 2021, but it couldn't come on a worse time, because I think some retailers might just say, screw it. You don't seem to be a very local comic shop friendly publisher at this point, and I would have to agree with them. I'm not in favor of what's going on. I don't know if UCS was like, listen, we're getting out of the game. This doesn't feel profitable, or we don't like the logistics. We don't want to expand. Or if DC was like, you know what, we feel like Lunar's doing a better job, and we want to go with one distributor moving forward in 2021. If the latter is the case, I think they probably made a strategic error, and they're probably going to lose some customers. Not only readers, but I'm talking about retail customers who do the bulk of the order. I think these minimum sales order requirements are ill thought out and very poorly timed. I do not like that at all. I think it's mean-spirited to mom and pop retail owners, local business, like small businesses being destroyed right now by the pandemic. And it feels like DC Comics is kind of piling on them. What do you guys think? Am I on the right track? Am I seeing this completely incorrectly? Are DC Comics, is this an appropriate move by DC Comics this time? Because I just don't see it. But I do want to hear other people's opinions. This is all very spur of the moment. This information has all come out within the last hour or two. So I definitely need to read up more on it. Like I said, I do want to bring a retailer back onto the channel to talk about this, preferably one that was being serviced through UCS, because they are going to be working with Lunar moving forward, especially if they want to be working with DC or be selling DC Comics. Obviously, Batman is the best-selling ongoing comic. I expect very exciting things happening in March with the new creative teams being launched, probably some new initiatives, things like that. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Can you believe it happened again? DC Comics is now dropping UCS to go in favor of Lunar as far as periodicals in North America. Their deal in the UK with Diamond UK is still in place. Penguin Random House is still obviously going to be doing their graphic novels and trades. And they've set new minimum order criteria. Is this a good time for that? As the economy is trying to recover from the pandemic, is this a good time for DC Comics to tell smaller retailers you have to buy in bigger than you can afford? I say no. I don't know. I can't wait to hear from you guys. Obviously, there will be a follow-up video on this, and I'll talk to y'all later.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.